you can't imagine anything could be more positive than that. And so that's wonderful.
If there's something to come back to after having that, it's not much better that you could have arrived back into a world to find.
No. I mean, the downside of it is that there's such a need for it, because part of what I think I have to offer perhaps is encouragement, because I don't think the planet would be better off with fewer people on it. And I don't think that the ambitious motivations of young men are nothing but the manifestation of the corrupt will to power, et cetera, et cetera. And the fact that so many people are pining away nihilistically in some sense, in no small part because of such accusations, because they're being taken out by their own conscience. I think that's absolutely appalling. And seeing how positive people are in relationship to what I'm doing has that as its shadow, which is, well, isn't it so awful that that's necessary? I think of people as individuals. And so there's not a mass of people. It's the wrong level of analysis as far as I'm concerned. The right level of analysis is each person. And I think that that's a core tenet of Western civilization, to the degree that the West is actually civilized, let's say. The more it's civilized, the more the emphasis is on the individual. And the idea that the individual is sovereign is the core axiom of Western civilization, of democracy itself. And I believe that that statement is as true as any statement we've managed to collectively formulate. And so if it's true, then it is the real battle is at the level of the individual, or even within the individual. And that's fine with me. And so mostly what I'm doing is attempting to make connections with individuals, even though I'm talking to thousands and thousands of people. But I'm always talking to one person. I learned that in part from Kierkegaard, because Kierkegaard believed firmly that as soon as a truth was embodied by the mob, it was no longer a truth. The truth was in and of itself something that was always manifested at the level of the individual.
People know this they know this in their own lives, that you have wisdom on your own, you go into a group and you compromise that wisdom for some reason, social norms, or the way you've dealt with past traumas, or the things that you think other people want to hear from you.
That's diffusion of responsibility, right? Because when you're buried in the mob, you can do and say things that, well, how about when you betray yourself? Oh, yeah. So you want to see, there's this association that's very strange that occurred in the development of Christian thought between the snake in the Garden of Eden and Satan. There's no indication in the original story that the snake has anything to do with the Lord of all evil. It's a very weird conclusion that's been drawn. It's almost extra biblical, because there's almost no mention of Satan in the Bible at all, much less any direct connection between the serpent and Satan. It's a very, very strange idea, but it's part of this psychologization of evil. The enemy you harbor in your own heart who hates you, that's the ultimate predator. And when there's these images of Mary with her head in the stars and baby in her arms and her foot on a snake, it's like, well, that's the eternal feminine. Her head's in the stars because she's oriented towards the highest good, and she's protecting her infant from predators. That could be an actual predator, but that's been the case throughout not just human history, but mammalian history. Could be other people who are predators. Start out as a disparate bundle of motivations and emotions sort of warring with one another. You want to get integrated, because then you have all the horses that are pulling your chariot pulling in the same direction. And you're much more likely to get to where you want to go then, and also much more likely to specify a good place to go. So that's that's something else conservatives have to teach young people, which is, well, get yourself disciplined. Well, why? Well, not so you're a slave, but so that you could be a master, to use a terminology that you're not supposed to use anymore. But, this is in relationship to yourself, not to others. So, yeah. And to begin with, you have to accept an external master, because you just don't have the wisdom to do that for yourself, or the ability, or the opportunity often. Everybody knows this. They feel bad when they they decide they're going to get themselves in good shape and go to the gym, and lasts like 3
days.
Attempts. Yeah. And then no one's happy about the fact that they quit. We know that we need to go through a disciplinary process, and we need to subjugate ourselves to a disciplinary process. That's part of the problem with the constant harping about the, oppressive patriarchy. It's like, well, you need a disciplinary process. So, well, that's just oppression and slavery. It's like, no, it's not. No more than a game is. Not a good game. A good game isn't oppression and slavery.
We saw, was it being on time, being punctual was laid at the feet of some oppressive superstructure?
White supremacy, yeah.
Yeah, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's utterly imbecilic. You're in this box and you have to make the best of it. And you might say, well, I don't want to be in a box. It's like, are you so sure you don't want to be in a box? A box is a fortress. The walls keep the dragons away. You want to be in a box. Paradise is a walled garden. It's not a garden without walls. It's got walls, right? You have a house, it has walls. You have a room, it has walls. You don't want to be outside of a box. Pick your damn box and then figure out how to make it into a garden. Well, I want a box without walls. It's, no, you don't. It's nothing but snakes. Yeah.
You spoke about this last night in relation to relationships. And you said that when you commit to somebody, there is the inevitable pain that any future catastrophe is going to need to be worked out in a difficult way between you and the person that you've committed to, as opposed to you being able to go, oh, well, cool.
I'm out of here.
The side chicks are warm on Tinder in any case. I'm off.
Yeah, right. Well, that was something I really learned from reading Carl Jung. He thought about marriage as, he used alchemical symbolism as purification requires heat and pressure. And so you have a container and it gets hot. And that's when you want to leave. That's when the changes can take place. And sometimes they have to be radical to maintain the relationship. Very radical. But hopefully those radical changes are positive. But what makes you think you'd make them if there wasn't a fire lit under you? And one of the fires is, I can't escape from you. Here we are locked in combat, right? Here we are in this adversarial relationship.
Beneficial adversary.
Yeah, exactly. Beneficial adversary, yeah. There's no out except through. And there's no evidence that through will work. And so that's part of the utility of the vow, is to turn the temperature up. And, you could say, well, I'll escape. But the problem with that is, escape to where? You're not going to have another relationship? And if to the degree that you brought the catastrophe to the previous relationship, which is at least a 50-50 probability, right? What makes you think you're not going to bring it to the next relationship?
You're the common denominator between all of the
experiences. That's right. I've had many bad relationships. Like, really? I've never met anyone I can trust.